stretches on endlessly, and I always miss deadlines. At one time, Grace came home and she said, "I got this project due for school, Dad, and what was it due?" And she said, "In 3 weeks." And both she and I went, "I got 3 weeks." And John went, "You only got 3 weeks." It's just the difference. Nick, I appreciate you bringing up Hugh Hefner. I don't know if y'all saw Jimmy Kimmel, but his comment was that Hugh Hefner was the only person that made it to heaven and was disappointed. It's like, what are all these harps? Where are the women? It was funny thought. So, as you guys know, I've got a long period of recovery in my life story. And I can remember that one of the first times I ever went to a meeting and hearing one of these kind of salty old guys that had been in recovery for a long time say he was a very grateful recovering alcoholic. And I remember thinking, what in the world is there to be grateful about? Because I can't drink anymore, I can't smoke weed anymore, I can't hang around my friends anymore, I got to go to these stupid meetings, got to go do all this stuff that they were telling me I needed to do. There was nothing to be grateful about. And what I'd like to share with you this morning are some things I've been reading in a book by a man named Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan monk. He wrote a book, several books, but this one in particular is Breathing Underwater. And what Richard Rohr would say is that the man in that meeting was saying he was a grateful recovering alcoholic because he learned 4 spiritual truths. And that's what I'd like to talk about this morning. The first spiritual truth is that we have to suffer to heal. The second is that we need to surrender to win or succeed. The third is we need to die to live. And the fourth is that to keep what I have, I need to give it away. Now, the first time I hear those, my response is, what? Those don't make any sense. They fly in the face of everything I've ever been taught. What do you mean you have to suffer to heal? In fact, my whole life has been spent avoiding suffering. I'll avoid pain at all costs and try to keep the peace with other people. And one of the reasons I ended up on that path in the first place is I was so uncomfortable in social situations that until I discovered alcohol, I didn't know how to really go talk to people. But once I did that, that was a magic green ring. I was trying to avoid pain. I've tried to avoid suffering as much as I possibly can. In fact, our culture teaches us that. And it gives us all kind of different ways to do it. I avoid suffering by eating too much, and drinking too much, and shopping too much, and watching endless episodes of Walking Dead, or whatever it is, and just sitting there avoiding suffering. I want distraction. I want to feel like this doesn't hurt. So that thing, suffering to heal, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Nor does the idea that I need to surrender to somehow come out ahead. Because John Wayne never did that. He never raised a white flag. Surrendering means I lost. We don't do that. As a culture, we don't do that. And we certainly don't do it. And particularly so for men, we don't surrender. We never quit fighting. I can remember high school coaches that said, we're going to, fight till hell freezes over, and when that happens, we're going to go out and keep fighting on the ice. We never quit. We never give up. We never surrender. That doesn't make either. And then this idea of you have to die to win. Die to live. What a dumb idea that is. But trying to die to live, I'm trying to live it up. Feel alive. I want to try to get as much packed into this as I can. My way. So dying to live makes no sense at all. And then this idea of I have to give it away to keep it. It's probably one of the reasons we struggle with a fair and equitable taxing system. I don't want to have to give up anything that I've got. And I think it's a prevalent attitude around our culture that if I earned it, it's mine. So why should I have to share it with other people who haven't earned theirs? And we live in a very me-driven culture. So the idea of giving things away so I get to keep them is really hard. Now, I don't mind every once in a while buying one of those homeless newspapers from the guy for $1, or maybe giving somebody on the street a little bit of money, but really giving of myself, the way that talks about, I'm not so sure about that. So none of these spiritual truths that Richard Rohr talks about make much sense in the context of my culture or my life. It's the exact opposite of everything I've ever been taught. But when you sit with it just for a moment, in the end, we almost have to conclude, how else can it be? How else has it been? Because I know, in truth, the only time I've ever made progress in my life and healed is after I've been suffering. I don't show up at the therapist's office, and I don't show up in need of pastoral care or guidance from a friend or asking a mentor until I'm stuck. Or until life has gotten so painful. Like a friend of mine said, he never, ever, ever changes anything about himself until he doesn't have any other options. And usually we get to that place when we've painted ourselves into the corner. Now, it's not the kind of no pain, no gain thing that you see on a health club wall. It's more of, think back just for a moment about the significant growth that you've made in your life. And inevitably, you'll recognize what preceded it with some degree of discomfort and pain. If no other reason, or no other thing than the free fall and disorientation and insecurity of trying something new. Trying a new job, trying a new relationship, trying a new hobby, trying a new way of expressing yourself. All that's almost always preceded by that discomfort. And when we grow, it comes out of that pain that we had prior to. 12-step circles, what you hear is nobody came into the rooms on a winning streak. But the fact is true that I think most of us never show up and ask for help until we're pretty beaten up. And then it's like I've got my hand behind my back. I was like, oh, okay, I'll ask for some help here. And when it comes, I get relief and I heal. The second spiritual truth, I have to surrender to win. Well, you know what? If I think about that word surrender in a different context, in a different paradigm, not as I've lost, but rather that I've quit fighting. It's like I've been going up against the wall, and going up against the wall, and going up against the wall, and going, this thing is painful, and I can't figure it out. But I keep doing it. And when I surrender, I stop just for a moment and quit doing things the way I've always done them. And then I realize, wait a second, I can go around this. If lesson, I don't understand and internalize that truth until I've surrendered and quit fighting whatever it was the way I've always been fighting it. It's like Einstein said, I can't solve the problem with the same thought processes that caused it. I have to quit fighting. And the third truth, that I have to die to live. I think probably more than anything else is the heart of these four spiritual truths. Because in essence, what it's saying is, I have to get out of my own way. Who I am without change in here and here will continue to do the same things over and over and over and over and over. So I think it's interesting in different religious faiths, traditions, that we hear about rebirth. That we die to the old ways and we are reborn into new. In essence, what is therapy but going in and learning about the way I have been and then being reborn with a new set of tools, moving forward without some of the old baggage. Because another thing you'll hear in 12-step circles is the same person will drink again. I have to go through that internal personal transformation. And that's what Richard Rohr talks about in his book. And one of the things that he talks about as a Franciscan monk is his disappointment in the way the mainstream Christian church has allowed people to get a pass on going to church every Sunday and then not working on the internal personal transformation that's required for all of us to grow spiritually. That's certainly true of people in the 12-step process. I have to die the way I've always been thinking and doing things if I want to live into the life that I'm capable of having. And then finally, that last spiritual truth, that I have to give it away if I want to keep it. In the end, is so very true, because I am continuing to be healed and continuing to be fed spiritually when I'm working with other people, when I'm sharing my hard-earned lessons with them to the extent that they want to learn them. But giving it away and sharing it with our children, with our friends, as mentors, all of those are opportunities for us to share what we have. Because keeping it all to ourselves does not feed us, it overloads us. So that fourth spiritual truth, we have to give it away to keep it, sustains the whole process so that I continue to grow and heal and expand, and grow and heal and expand. So there you are. 4 spiritual truths I'd like to explore in future talks, each one of them. But the idea that they don't make any sense makes perfect sense, because they're not just truth, they're spiritual truth. And it seems like spiritual truths are the ones that are the most difficult to wrestle with. But the fact of the matter is, and I love this, we're all here on a spiritual journey, and that involves spiritual practice. And that's how we get better at this. Spiritual practice. It doesn't mean we're going to win the game the minute we understand some of the rules of it. So I'll conclude just by saying that these truths are like the directions on a map. They can allow me a path. I've got a map with a compass, and I've got the cardinal directions. I know which way to turn when I'm operating with these 4 truths. And as I begin to practice them, I become more and more like that old guy at the meeting that I didn't like to hear him say that he was very grateful about all his life had provided him. But the fact of the matter is, the more we practice this, the more grateful we this, to practice it, and get better and share it.